The marble corridors of the imperial palace echoed with footsteps that grew slower with each passing hour. Behind gilded doors, oil lamps flickered against frescoed walls depicting gods and goddesses in eternal embrace, but tonight their painted smiles seemed to mock the reality unfolding in the emperor's private chambers. The new empress, barely 18 and trembling beneath layers of silk and gold, had discovered that becoming the most powerful woman in the Roman Empire came with a price that no amount of wealth or status could justify. What should have been a night of celebration had become something far more sinister. The wedding ceremony, witnessed by senators and foreign dignitaries, had been a masterpiece of political theater. But now, with the guests departed and the palace guard standing silent vigil, the true nature of imperial marriage was about to be revealed. The emperor's voice, which had commanded legions and conquered nations, now spoke in whispers that carried the weight of absolute authority. "You belong to Rome now," he murmured, his words cutting through the perfumed air like a blade. "And Rome belongs to me." Welcome to Scandalous Pasts, where we uncover the shocking truths hidden behind history's most glittering facades. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of ancient Rome's darkest secrets: what really happened when the most powerful men in the world claimed their imperial brides. These weren't love stories or fairy tale romances. They were calculated demonstrations of power that turned wedding nights into political statements written in fear and submission. Before we descend into the shadows of the imperial bedchamber, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss our journeys into history's most scandalous secrets. Now, let's step into a world where marriage was warfare, where love was weakness, and where the wedding night was just the beginning of a lifetime of beautiful captivity. Hashtag the politics of imperial marriage. In the marble halls of ancient Rome, marriage was never about love. For emperors, it was the ultimate political weapon, a tool for forging alliances, legitimizing power, and demonstrating dominance over both enemies and subjects. The wedding night wasn't a private moment between husband and wife, but a carefully orchestrated display of imperial authority that would echo through the corridors of power for generations. Augustus set the template when he divorced his pregnant wife Scribonia on the very day she gave birth to his daughter Julia, simply because he wanted to marry Livia Drusilla for political reasons. The message was clear: personal feelings were irrelevant when imperial power was at stake. The bride's family understood their role in this transaction. They weren't gaining a son-in-law, they were offering tribute to the most powerful man in the known world. Fathers competed fiercely for the honor of sacrificing their daughters to imperial ambition, knowing that refusal could mean exile, confiscation of property, or worse. The engagement period was a masterclass in psychological preparation. The chosen bride was removed from her family home and placed in the care of imperial tutors who would reshape her into the perfect imperial wife. She learned not just protocol and etiquette, but the fundamental lesson that her individual desires were now irrelevant. She existed to serve the emperor's needs and Rome's glory. These tutors, usually older women who had survived their own imperial marriages, taught lessons that went far beyond proper behavior at state dinners. They explained the realities of imperial life, the constant surveillance, the political implications of every word and gesture, and most importantly, the absolute necessity of submission to the emperor's will in all things. The wedding ceremony itself was designed to reinforce these power dynamics at every turn. Unlike modern weddings where the bride is celebrated, Roman imperial ceremonies focused entirely on the emperor's magnificence. The bride was a beautiful accessory, displayed like a precious jewel to demonstrate the emperor's ability to claim whatever he desired. Hashtag the ritual of conquest. As the last wedding guests departed and the palace settled into an uneasy quiet, the true ceremony began, one that no historian would record in official annals, but which every imperial bride understood with terrifying clarity. The wedding night wasn't a celebration of union, but a ritual of domination designed to establish the emperor's absolute authority over his new wife's body, mind, and soul. The imperial bedchamber had been prepared with the same meticulous attention to detail as a military campaign. Every element, from the positioning of furniture to the selection of oils and perfumes, was chosen to reinforce the power dynamic that would define the marriage. The room itself was a stage set for conquest, decorated with frescoes depicting the emperor's military victories and furnished with objects that symbolized his dominance over the known world. The emperor's entrance into the chamber was choreographed to maximize psychological impact. He didn't come as a loving husband eager to consummate his marriage, but as a conqueror claiming his prize. His approach was deliberate, measured, designed to build tension and reinforce the bride's helplessness in the face of absolute power. "You are no longer the daughter of your father," Emperor Caligula reportedly told his bride Caesonia on their wedding night. "You are not even truly my wife. You are Rome incarnate, and Rome bends to no will but mine." These words, recorded by palace servants who overheard them, reveal the psychological framework that governed imperial marriages. The physical consummation itself was treated as a political act rather than an expression of love or desire. The emperor's performance was about demonstrating power, not sharing pleasure. The bride's role was to submit completely, to show through her acceptance that even the most intimate aspects of human experience were subject to imperial authority. Some emperors, like Nero, turned the wedding night into an elaborate performance, complete with musicians and observers who would later attest to the emperor's virility and the bride's submission. The privacy that most couples take for granted was another luxury denied to imperial wives. Even their most intimate moments were subject to public scrutiny and political interpretation. The morning after held its own rituals of humiliation and control. The bloodied sheets were displayed to confirm the bride's virginity and the marriage's consummation, but this wasn't just about proving purity, it was about demonstrating conquest. The physical evidence of the emperor's claiming of his bride became a symbol of his power over all Roman women. Hashtag the Empress as imperial property. The morning sun that rose over the imperial palace illuminated a transformed woman. The young bride who had entered the emperor's chambers the night before no longer existed. In her place stood an empress who had learned, through the most intimate possible education, that she was now property of the Roman state. The daily routine that began after the wedding night was designed to reinforce this new reality at every turn. The empress's schedule was not her own to determine. Every moment was planned by imperial advisors who understood that her activities were matters of state policy. Her morning toilette became a public ceremony where senators' wives and foreign dignitaries could observe the emperor's prize. The empress's wardrobe was perhaps the most visible symbol of her transformation from person to possession. Every garment was chosen not for her comfort or preference, but to communicate messages about imperial power. The colors she wore corresponded to political seasons: purple during military campaigns to emphasize imperial authority, white during religious festivals to suggest purity and divine favor. Her correspondence was monitored with the same attention given to diplomatic communications. Letters to family members were read by imperial censors before delivery, and responses were similarly scrutinized. The empress learned to write in careful, neutral language that revealed nothing of her true thoughts or feelings. The empress's role in producing heirs transformed her body into a vessel for imperial ambition. Her menstrual cycles were tracked by palace physicians, her diet was regulated to optimize fertility, and her physical activities were restricted to protect her reproductive capacity. Pregnancy brought not joy but increased surveillance, as the potential heir growing within her was considered more valuable than her own life. Social interactions became elaborate performances where the empress had to navigate complex protocols while maintaining the appearance of gracious contentment. She hosted dinners for senators' wives, attended religious ceremonies, and participated in public festivals, always aware that her behavior was being analyzed for signs of discontent or political ambition. Hashtag the price of resistance. Throughout Roman history, some imperial wives dared to challenge the system that treated them as ornamental property, and their stories serve as both inspiration and warning about the deadly consequences of defying absolute power. Julia the Elder, daughter of Augustus, became the most famous example of what happened to empresses who refused to accept their gilded cages. Intelligent, charismatic, and politically astute, Julia initially attempted to work within the system, using her position to influence policy and support causes she believed in. But as she matured, she began to chafe against the restrictions that governed every aspect of her life. Her most dangerous act of resistance was her attempt to control her own sexuality. In a society where the empress's body belonged to the state, her decision to take lovers was not just adultery but treason. She conducted these affairs with a deliberate recklessness that suggested she wanted to be caught, perhaps believing that her status as Augustus's daughter would protect her from the worst consequences. She was wrong. When her affairs were discovered, Augustus's response was swift and merciless. Julia was not simply divorced or exiled, she was erased. Her name was removed from public monuments, her image was destroyed, and she was banished to a barren island where she lived in poverty until her death. Messalina, wife of Emperor Claudius, represented a different type of resistance, one that attempted to use the system's own tools against itself. Rather than openly defying imperial authority, she tried to accumulate power through manipulation, sexual intrigue, and political maneuvering. Her legendary promiscuity wasn't just personal indulgence but a calculated attempt to build networks of influence. Her downfall came when she overreached, attempting to marry another man while still wed to Claudius. This wasn't just adultery but an attempt at a political coup. The response was immediate and brutal. Messalina was executed without trial, and her children were stripped of their imperial status. These high-profile cases of resistance and punishment served their intended purpose. They terrified other imperial wives into submission. The palace was filled with women who had witnessed the fates of those who had dared to challenge the system, and they understood that survival depended on perfect compliance with imperial expectations. Hashtag the survivors and their strategies. While many imperial wives met tragic ends, a select few managed to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial marriage and emerge not just intact, but influential. These survivors developed sophisticated strategies for accumulating power while maintaining the appearance of perfect compliance with imperial expectations. Livia Drusilla, wife of Augustus, stands as perhaps the most successful example of strategic survival in imperial marriage. Her approach was masterful in its patience and subtlety. She understood that direct confrontation would be fatal, but that careful cultivation of influence could eventually yield real power. Livia's first insight was that Augustus, despite his public image of invincibility, was deeply insecure about his legitimacy and constantly sought validation from those around him. She positioned herself as his most reliable source of affirmation, offering unwavering support for his decisions while subtly guiding his thinking through carefully timed suggestions and observations. Her control over information became one of her most powerful tools. As Empress, Livia had access to palace gossip, correspondence, and intelligence reports that she used to stay ahead of political developments. She cultivated relationships with servants, guards, and minor officials who provided her with early warnings about threats and opportunities. Livia also understood the importance of public perception in maintaining her influence. She crafted an image of herself as the perfect Roman matron, devoted to her husband, dedicated to traditional values, and completely uninterested in political power. This carefully constructed persona allowed her to wield significant influence while avoiding the accusations of ambition that had destroyed other empresses. These successful empresses shared several common strategies. First, they all understood the importance of timing, knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, when to advance their interests and when to retreat. Second, they all cultivated multiple sources of influence rather than relying on their relationship with the emperor alone. Third, they all maintained the appearance of traditional feminine virtue while secretly developing the skills necessary for political maneuvering. Hashtag the empire's darkest legacy. The systematic abuse of imperial wives created ripple effects that extended far beyond the marble walls of Roman palaces, establishing patterns of gender-based oppression that would influence Western civilization for centuries to come. The treatment of empresses as ornamental property became a template for how powerful men throughout history would relate to their wives. The legal frameworks that supported imperial marriage practices became embedded in Roman law, which formed the foundation for legal systems throughout Europe and beyond. The concept of coverture, the legal doctrine that married women became the property of their husbands, drew directly from the precedents established by imperial marriages. The Christian Church, despite its eventual condemnation of many Roman practices, absorbed and adapted many of the attitudes toward women that had been refined in imperial bedchambers. The emphasis on female submission, the treatment of women's bodies as vessels for male purposes, and the denial of women's spiritual equality all reflected the influence of Roman imperial culture. Medieval European courts explicitly modeled themselves on Roman imperial practices, including the treatment of royal wives as political assets rather than individual human beings. The arranged marriages, the public consummation ceremonies, and the systematic isolation of queens from their families all echoed the patterns established by Roman emperors centuries earlier. The psychological techniques developed for controlling imperial wives found new applications in various forms of institutional oppression. The combination of isolation, surveillance, and systematic humiliation that had been perfected in Roman palaces became standard methods for controlling prisoners, slaves, and other vulnerable populations throughout history. Understanding this dark legacy is essential for recognizing how deeply embedded these patterns of oppression have become in Western civilization. The treatment of Roman empresses wasn't an aberration or historical curiosity, it was the foundation for centuries of systematic gender-based oppression that continues to influence our world today. And there you have it, the shocking truth behind the golden facade of imperial Roman marriage. What we've uncovered isn't just ancient history, but the blueprint for centuries of systematic oppression that reduced the most powerful women in the world to ornamental prisoners in their own palaces. The wedding nights of Roman empresses reveal how absolute power corrupts absolutely, turning even the most sacred human bonds into instruments of political control. These women discovered that becoming the most privileged person in the empire meant losing everything that made life worth living: autonomy, dignity, genuine relationships, and hope for the future. What aspect of this imperial nightmare shocked you the most? The systematic psychological conditioning, the transformation of wedding nights into political theater, or the way an entire civilization normalized such cruelty? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this journey into the dark heart of imperial power captivated you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Scandalous Pasts for more shocking revelations from history's shadows. Ring that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the scandals that shaped our world. Remember, the stories we tell here at Scandalous Pasts are fictional tales that may draw inspiration from real historical events and human nature, but they are crafted for entertainment and reflection rather than historical fact. Until next time, keep questioning the golden facades of power, and remember, true strength lies not in the ability to dominate others, but in the courage to resist domination, even when the cost is everything.